Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm thrilled to have Christina Rowe with me today to talk about respect. And Christina will let you know how we know each other. It's just a delight to have her. So, welcome, Christina. Please introduce yourself to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Christina Rowe. I am a talent development and organizational effectiveness expert in my career. Had the pleasure of overlapping with building out a program that's currently up for a couple of awards, actually, and being able to work with Throughability as a great vendor partner too in that, which was fun. And really, I am like to think about being a problem solver in my career. It's come from an expertise in leadership and learning and organizational development and effectiveness. But really, it's where all of those pieces matter. And there's sometimes so many things going together, being the catalyst to the solution. So, going in and really energizing, how do we bring in the right people? How do we make the right connections? How do we get the right information from different departments so that we're building out a solution or a learning program that really solves what the business needs and helps get the business to their goals?
I love it, Christina. We're so aligned. And I would say that I see you as a leader in human-centric work, especially in the tech space. So
Yeah.
thank you for holding up that flag as we navigate all the VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity in the world, and that you have a great global experience, especially in the tech space. So welcome, and it's just an honor to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks. So let's start with Christina. How do you define respect in the workplace?
Yeah, I love this question. And I really was thinking on it, and I always come back to the most common workplace needs that all humans have, that we need to be seen, heard, valued, and safe within the workplace. And I think when those are met, those are really good guides to how are we making people feel respected? How do we feel respected? That seen and heard. Can we speak up? Are we able to share ideas? Are we seen for the things that we're contributing, that we're driving, for the way we show up for other people? And that valued is, are we part of the work community? Do we feel like we have our place within it? Do we feel like we're appreciated for what's brought? And then the safe really plays into that. Mostly here in the US, it's psychological safety, right? Um, there's also the physical safety piece of it, which the OSHA and things like that. But I think, globally, sometimes you are working with cultures where a safe environment isn't always a given. And that's important to keep in mind too. Are you respected for your safety, both psychologically, physically? All of that comes into play. And I think when those four boxes are checked, we find that people feel really respected within their work. And even more than that, it drives them to be more engaged in their work because they feel that sense of being valued within the workplace too.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to go a little deeper with you on psychological safety. I'm so glad you went there. I do think, yeah, beyond the basics of we all want to be seen and heard and valued. Oprah Winfrey said that as the summary of her on the last episode of her 25-year show. But the one around psychological safety, I'm intrigued with Amy Edmondson's work on that because what goes hand in hand for those watching, if you haven't seen her TED Talk, highly recommend you look it up. What I think gets talked about less is her concept of teaming. To
Mm.
me, those two things go so hand in hand. And why I'm bringing that up right now, Christina, is with your definition of the opening part of the seeing people for the value they bring. She's done a beautiful job of saying, look, teaming is not the classic collaboration.
Yeah.
Collaboration is we have a meeting. We decide what you're going to do, we decide what I'm going to do, and then we go off separately and do it. That's not teaming. Teaming, in my understanding from Amy Edmondson, is that you have expertise I don't have. There's no way I could ever have that. And I have expertise that you don't have. And how can we respect each other for that expertise and really seek to then collaborate in a way that brings the best of everyone forward so that we're all heading towards that North Star, right? For instance, in her TED Talk, saving those, I believe, about 50 miners that were stuck in Chile, and how it took people from all over the world to figure out how to bring them up safe. And they did. Every single one of them came out alive. Those are the kind of moments I think that really get us to that call to action.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that you also tap into, with the teaming piece, it's also about all of us bringing curiosity to our work, right? Are we curious what we don't know? Are we curious what other ideas somebody might have? Or are we curious what their expertise might be able to do to enhance a piece of work that we couldn't do without them? I think we sometimes get so much pressure to feel like we have all the answers, or we have to prove ourselves, or we live in a society with so much social media being thrown at us where it's kind of seems like everyone has it so together when really they probably don't, right? That we feel like we have to have these answers or this polished like thing all the time instead of being able to just slow down and go, you know what? Tell me more about that. Or I haven't heard of that before. Like, can you tell me more about it? And I think that's a big piece where that teaming, that building deeper connections and understanding of what people are bringing gives so much value and ties so deeply into workplace respect and great engagement. You actually are learning throughout the process, but you're also making other people feel like their life's work of building up that expertise, of having those ideas, of building who they are is valued within the situation. And it actually opens up that door to deeper psychological safety of trusting how people are showing up, trusting that they have your back, trusting that they care to ask you the questions that are most important to get to the right outcomes and things like that, but also that they're taking time for you to be a full human and share what you know.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Christina. Before we started recording, we were talking about some global differences. And so when you bring up curiosity, and I'm curious to hear your perspective on how that varies
Mm,
by parts of the world. For just to warm us up, the area I work in a lot is US India teams, and
mm,
they're very different. The
yeah,
education system is different. So,
yeah,
for instance, in India, it's pretty much college is one exam at the end of the year, whereas in the US, it's constant exams, projects, group work where asking questions is a good thing, whereas in India, that's shunned upon
yeah.
almost, right? I'd love to hear your perspective on that aspect of the global part of how do you create a respectful environment to
Mm.
recognize and meet people where they are with, that's sort of, there's almost a spectrum like anything, right? On how do you open up a culture of curiosity?
Yeah, I love that. I think that one of the things is we have to go in with an open mind that it's okay for other people to not see things exactly how we see them, right? And they may value different parts of that experience as a team or as how they interact or how curiosity works for them. I had very early in my career had the opportunity to work at the V&A Museum with the Royal Institute of British Architects as an intern. And I was, right out of school, super driven, so excited about the work. And I would get sent down to like the catacombs of the museum to like work through some of our from an architect that we got. And I would forget tea time. And tea time happened twice a day as a team. Nobody scheduled calls over it. Nobody did that. Right. And they thought it was my coworkers thought it was so funny that I could forget tea time because it was very heads down work the rest of the day. So they all looked forward to that chance to be curious about each other and build their teaming, in that moment. And so everyone stopped what they were doing and we would sit and have tea and biscuits together twice a day for just like 15 minutes. And it was funny because I'm very American, very much like, hardworking, like that kind of drive. I would just be so into the work, I'd kind of forget. I didn't have that internal clock cued into those two times. And it was this kind of like office joke that the, American was down working too hard and like they'd come and fetch me if I forgot. And so I had to learn to be curious about the time, to like do that, set reminders for myself to like pop my head up and like actually go up to the office to have it. And it was the time that people were curious. They would ask questions about what each person was working on, but they would also talk about all their personal life things, the things that build that deeper connection. And so it was really like this difference between here and there of pausing together. And that pause was the really important part. To I've also had the experience of I was really lucky in my career to work with a tech company based out of New Zealand called Zero, who are wonderful. And it was so wonderful to see the it's very globally diverse. Much started in New Zealand and does a lot around Maori culture and really has a respect for it. And it was so neat to be able to go and learn the different ways that people see and envision how to work together, right? Some of the cultures we worked with um, within the global diversity of it were really less confrontational. So when I was tasked with helping to build a feedback culture, it was a big cultural learning of really giving permission to a lot of different regions that we were in of it's okay to give feedback. And in fact, it's also okay to ask for feedback. If you're the person on the team and you're asking your manager, your VP, at giving them some direction to say, hey, would it be, could you keep an eye on this? I'm giving this big presentation. I've been working on X, Y, and Z. Would you give me your thoughts and feedback so I can continue to get better at it? Right? And initiate that and create that permission giving. Because in a lot of the cultures we were working within, but it was very much feedback was more, only when it's desperately needed or when something's really wrong, because it felt like it could be like too much of a tear down behavior or something. And so we spent a lot of time and energy really looking at, you know, how do you actually do it in a way that you're actually helping people succeed by giving them ongoing feedback? And so to build that conversation, but that took a lot of learning to be curious, like what are the hesitations that people might have to get to that goal? And also, how do we need to adjust some of the language at times or the environment that might give permission to ask for feedback, to give feedback and build that depending on region as well?
That's so rich. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's a lot there. So I think we've covered the territory of how do you know when respect is there and how do you navigate it on a global level. Let's touch on anything that you've experienced when respect is not there and
Mm,
how you navigated that in a work culture.
yeah, absolutely. I think when respect's not there, the biggest thing is that those disengagement behaviors. You see more mistakes. You see people kind of having to push back away from the table a little bit to really protect themselves in the environment. You see that they, are having to kind of disengage or not give their full all. So you'll see it come up in that ways. And not always in bad performance, but just less of them, right? You see their personality fade a little bit, they pull back a little bit, they don't engage as deeply in conversations. And I've often seen that as a sign where I've seen people on teams I've managed do that with certain other departments where they're not feeling respected for, in the environment or in the interactions. And so then that's when I always took it as a cue to step in, right? Hey, are you struggling with something? That kind of thing. And I've been in environments where I felt the same. I think usually I try to really address it with setting clear expectations or boundaries where they need to be of, hey, this makes me feel disrespected when you're speaking to me this way, or, kind of open the conversations. And then you kind of give that other person or that leader the space. Do they want to rise to the occasion and make it a better, respectful environment? Or do they not want to engage that way? Do they like their kind of habits that they're stuck in? I think it's really about can you open the door to change the disrespect environment? And sometimes we might not like the answer, but most of the time, I think it helps other people realize, like, oh, I was under so much stress, I was taking it out in the wrong way, or it was coming across wrong, or hold on, let me redirect my behavior. And so I think it's important to have those. big conversations, or they don't even have to be big, but they have to be clear.
Yeah, thank you. Also, what I'm hearing in that, Christina, is having the courage to go there, right? I
Hmm.
think the biggest obstacle to not going there is when people don't really say, time out, let's really look at this and unpack what's going on. And often, even if they do, they hone in on sort of their behavior. And yes, we know there's value in examining behavior and shifting it, but there's something underneath that, which is
Yeah,
usually much more, the meaning we make up, the emotions that are that are present. Do we create space to allow that to percolate a bit and
yeah,
unpack that in a neutral way so that we're not judging it before we jump to solution? Because I think we're really guilty, especially in the West and type A personality environments, that we just quickly want to get to the results. So thank you so much. Well, let's close, Christina, with your top tips, my friend, for our listeners to take away to have more respect in the workplace.
yeah, absolutely. I think my biggest tip, and all three will kind of tie a little bit to it, is I think where we see respect fall apart is often where we're carrying too much of a mental load. And so we stop doing the check-ins, we stop having the conversations, we stop asking questions, right? And so my biggest tip is schedule time for it. Don't carry it all around as, oh, I'll remember to do it in the moment, but actually lean into your calendar and put 10-minute appointments with yourself to, recognize someone. Do one on another, say every Wednesday, I'm going to ask someone follow-up questions from something they've shared with me. How are your kids? How are whatever it is to help them feel seen. Or, on Fridays, I'm going to ask people for their best idea they've heard this week, kind of thing. Because often those respect pieces, you know, and connection and engagement, they all come from us actually interacting as human beings. But we have so much on our to-do list that it's easy for people to get distracted or kind of silo themselves. So, my first one is be curious and ask more questions in that calendaring way. And then take time to listen, is the second one, right? We feel like we have to have the answers so often. But if we're asking more questions than answers we're giving, it's often building up people better around us and building those relationships better. And then going back that time to recognize each other, right? It doesn't have to be for big things all the time. It doesn't have to be the big award, but reminding people what you value about working with them on a regular basis, leaving space for that expertise, saying thank you so much for that idea or that feedback or that edit. Taking time to recognize people matters.
I love it. Thank you so much. All of that ties really well, especially with the opening letters and the respect quotient. Recognize we're different, empathize with each other, and have spaciousness to really not rush through these conversations, but really take our time. Christina, it's been my delight to have you. Thank you so much. A great day.
Thanks.